Look, our own Michael Smith went off yesterday on the Sixers, and he said they're frauds until further notice. And I think you, Michael Holley, have
They're dead.
also.
They're less than frauds. They're dead.
They're dead. Okay.
They're, no, they're dead. Philly's dead. Philly
Well,
is dead. Philly, as we've known them, the Sixers are dead.
but you have
Dead.
alluded. Look, I understand people have feelings about Joel Embiid, and we can talk about that. But at the end of the
I like him.
day, he is an MVP level player. He is a top player in the league. So if you have a player like that on your team, you're going to always be a team that's fairly good, right? So I don't think he bears part of the blame, but at the end of the day, his body is his body, right? And I think that's something you have to come to accept as the Sixers. Like, his body may not hold up on us. So what is the right kind of co-star? What is the right kind of number two that we're going to have to support him and supporting cast in the event that happens? You know, he probably needs to, at this stage of his career, be treated like a Kawhi Leonard, and then you hope for the best in the postseason, as in you manage him throughout the season to try to get him through the postseason. And Daryl Morey, like, you may have to question his decisions because he brought James Harden in because they have a past relationship, and maybe it wasn't the most logical thing. Daryl Morey also is very big on analytics. He's very big on, like, the three.
Okay.
And so I don't think we can look like the player's the player. The players are always going to be safe. Even if they decide to trade him and move on, it's going to be the players. But you have to question the decisions of people who keep doing the same thing over again, right? So we have a lot of evidence, Daryl Morey, on James Harden, and you still chose to bring him to the team, right? So you still chose to do that. So, I think there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of blame to pass around in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But you know, there needs to be some introspection.
Listen, I want to know from you. That was a very reasonable explanation. I want to know, are you always this reasonable with players that maybe you don't like so much? For example, okay, what you just said about Joel Embiid makes sense. You said give him the Kawhi Leonard treatment. Let me just move it over to Anthony Davis. Mm-hmm. Maybe give him the Anthony Davis treatment. So are you this patient with Anthony Davis when his body continually breaks down? And it will. Mm-hmm. It will break down again because it's just something that happens with him. Where you say, oh, well, look, he's still a great player. His body breaks down. Kevin Durant. Mm-hmm. Kevin Durant, who's 5 years older than Joel Embiid. I know you're not always that patient with Kevin Durant, but will you be? Are you going to give Durant the treatment that you just gave Joel Embiid? Are you going to give Anthony Davis the treatment you just gave? Do you give Kawhi Leonard that? Look,
yeah, I do.
If you say, okay, all right, because if you're talking about low managing this guy, yes, you will. It's not may have to, you do. Joel Embiid is 30 years old. He's no kid. And I'm not saying his career is almost over. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But if you talk about management doing things over and over and expecting a different result, well, how foolish are we to say, well, it's going to be different. When you turn 30, your body gets stronger.
Right.
And you'll be able to play 75 games. And Joel Embiid in 2023-24 is going to be healthier and stronger than ever. No, he's not.
Well, I think, Michael, we have to be honest about they were trying to chase an MVP, right? This is a player and a team that felt like for 2 years, their guy was slighted for the award, right? So he needed to sort of get to a certain threshold and play a number of games, and they were probably chasing the wrong thing, right? And so I don't think you're going to be seeing that chase anymore. I would be shocked if they try to have Joel Embiid play 60-plus games next year. But that's also going to take him out of all NBA contention, right? There's all these changes to the rules. And players care about those individual awards. They care about them.
He'll play 65. He'll get his 65 games in. He'll get the bare minimum, so he's going to miss 17 regular season games next year. And look, I'm not even being critical. As a matter of fact, I would say how you got your MVP. That's on there. But nobody gives love, historical love, to MVPs versus champions. Like, they'll give love to MVPs, but give more love to champions. So you got your MVP. But now for you to get your championship, Kawhi Leonard, you mentioned him. The year they won, the Raptors won a championship, I think Leonard played 60 games. So he missed 22 games in a regular season intentionally.
Yeah.
And he was a beast in the playoffs. And so I think that's part of it. That's part of it for Joel Embiid. But the other part, and for Philly. But the other part is looking at their roster, Natalie.
Mm-hmm.
They had nobody who could check Jason Tatum, really. Like, Tobias Harris has the size, but he's not athletic enough to keep up with them. Tyrese Maxey has the want-to and the guts and the will, but he's 6'1". James Harden doesn't want to play defense. He's 6'5". Melton, not really up for Niang. Yeah, y'all ain't about it.
But they shouldn't have needed that. They shouldn't have needed that.
But they
Game
do.
6, they had Game 6 on their home court, right? And you should be able to expect James Harden to play like a number 2 because he's your number 2, and he didn't in those final 2 games, right? And so,
sure, but what happened? The team that you root for, the team that you love.
Yeah.
You saw the treatment. I as a matter of fact, I have turned it into, it's a whole term. There's the Wiggins treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jason Tatum got the Wiggins treatment last year in the NBA Finals, and he didn't like it. The Wiggins treatment was tough. He didn't like it. He didn't appreciate it at all. And so that is a guy who's his size, just as strong, athletic, versatile, well-conditioned, last year at least, was ready to meet the moment. He gave Jason Tatum fits. And so if you're trying to win a championship, you got to look around, you got to read the room and say, okay, what's going on in the Eastern Conference? We have to deal with Boston. We're going to have to deal with Cleveland eventually. Cleveland's going to grow up. We have to deal with Miami. They struggled with Miami last year. But last year,
not Miami. I'm not a believer in Cleveland being anything serious. But
okay, all right. So throw Cleveland out of it. Let's say Boston and Miami and Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You don't have the horses to deal with those guys beyond Embiid. Okay, Embiid, sure, but nobody really has anybody who can match Embiid. So you got the advantage there, but you better get you some athletic wings who can do some damage and can at least slow down. There's so many wings in the NBA who are incredible, and you don't have a good matchup for any of them.
That's very true, and I'm not trying to undersell the importance of a wing, but I'm just saying if you have a proper co-star, if you have a proper number 2, which is something also my Warriors have to address, right? Because that is not Klay Thompson anymore. When you have a proper number 2 who can do their job, that's going to offset the disadvantages. There's other defensive schemes that the Sixers can look to deploy. I mean, look at a team like the Nuggets, who I know we're going to talk about. Look at their team. Who's their great defensive wing? You know?
Well,
but they still were able, they were still able to deploy a scheme against Kevin Durant in that Game 6, right? So you need a better defensive coach. You need someone who can, Nick Nurse. We saw, he'll go to box and one. I'm just saying, if you're, everyone is not going to have a great athletic wing, right? But you need the right kind of co-star to pair next to Joel Embiid if he's going to continue to be your number 1, or he needs to become your number 2, right? And I don't think that one's possible. So that's what I think.
And the last thing I'll say is, just in all fairness, I'm not here to cape for Doc Rivers. He's doing well. As he said in that press conference, I enjoyed it. He said, hey, well, are you going to be back, Doc? Well, I got 2 years left. That's guaranteed money. Checks don't bounce. That's guaranteed.
Right, it is.
It's millions of dollars. So he's like, okay, you go fire me? Okay, I'm going to get paid anyway. So I'm not here to shed any tears for him. But you got to look at every relationship to kind of come full circle with the relationship analogy. Every relationship, you have to understand what it was before you got there. Sometimes it's time for a breakup, and it hasn't been a failure. You have taken them somewhere they hadn't gone before, and it's time for you to leave. So Doc Rivers got the most out of Joel Embiid, took Joel Embiid to a scoring championship, guided him or presided over his MVP season. In 3 years, they won a bunch of games, but they were never able to knock down the conference finals door. When he got to Boston, they were a bad team. When he left Boston, in the middle of Boston, they were a championship level team, championship contender, and then they were on the downside. Time to go. When he got to the Clippers, come on. Right. Punchline. They went from being a punchline to being a team that was expected to contend, and they never got there. And he brought in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And so I think when we look at Doc and say, oh, yeah, he blew a 3-2 lead there, 3-2 lead there, that's all fair. But the full story is he was able to take every situation he inherited, he made it better. Then it was time for him to go. He was never able to push the Clippers and Philadelphia over the top. He'll be somewhere because, as you said in your feed, yeah, it's a coaching carousel.
I'm curious to see if he gets another head job. I'm curious. I don't know if it's happening this offseason.
Lost in the first round. He lost in the first round. He's a good candidate. Nick Nurse quit before the season was over. He's a candidate right now. Monty Williams, the owner didn't like him.
Nurse and Monty should be.
And Budenholzer too, right?
Bud for the right kind of team. I think he's demonstrated he's the kind of coach you want to build up a young group, right? And kind of, but I don't think he's going to take you over.
All right. I like it. Relationships.
It's been a long time for me, so I hope it's still relevant. I haven't been there in a while.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.